Awesome. All right, everyone, I want to just give an introduction and say welcome to Mariano's Meetups. We're so excited because it's Thirsty Thursday, and we have Mattias Horseman here from Hendrick's Gin, which is an incredible, oops, I'm backwards, awesome gin. And he's going to show us how to make some great cocktails tonight. I also have Sarah Lutz here, who works with me at Mariano's. She's going to be our co-pilot and help us out throughout the night. Just a reminder, you must be 21 to be here tonight. And also, there's a chat button in the middle of the screen. Mattias, love any questions you have. He's prepared to answer them. We know that this group always has a lot of great questions. And we're very thankful for all of you to be here. This is a very crucial time when we're all sheltering in place and practicing social distancing. And there's going to be some new additions in the state of Illinois tomorrow where everyone is required to wear a mask in public and a few other things. But, you know, as we're taking this time seriously and being at home, we wanted to be able to connect with our customers virtually, show them some new recipes or drinking tips, and also we have wine classes, live music, so there's lots of action here. There's a bunch of people on today that are on regularly or join us regularly, so you know they know kind of like the variety that we present. But without any further ado, we want to say hi to Mattias, who used to live here in Illinois, in Chicago, and now lives in Texas, but he is still a true Chicago fan, and he's going to show us how to make some great Hendrick's cocktails.
Thanks so much, Amanda. I really appreciate it. It's such a pleasure to be with you guys today here online. I know it can be tough during these crazy quarantine times that we find ourselves living in, but I am super excited to be given the chance to be with all of you, because if it wasn't for this, we wouldn't have met. And I always say that strangers are just friends waiting to happen. So with that being said, let's get into it. Today, I'm really excited to take you on a bit of a journey. I wanted to take you all the way back to where gin first started and then where it's going to go in the future, and try and cover as many bases in between as possible, okay? So we're going to have a really great time today, and we're going to get going with a little bit of history of gin. Now, one of the things that separates gin from a lot of other spirit categories is a signature idea of botanicals, okay? So who knows what the signature botanical in gin is? I'm looking at that chat function right now on my computer, and I'm waiting for people to type in that answer. What is the signature botanical when it comes to gin? We have the correct answer from Ben. Thank you so much, Ben. Juniper berries is correct. Now, juniper berries have been around for thousands of years, okay? Back in ancient Greece and Rome, they used to actually rub juniper berries on gladiators to get their muscles to rehabilitate faster. They've been used for stomach ailments for generations and years and years and years. And one of my favorite developments in the world of juniper came when it came to Belgium and the Netherlands. You see, the apothecaries of the old time were sitting there and they were making this beautiful tonic that would actually help to cure some stomach upsets. And so they were using a malt-based spirit, and then they were adding different botanicals, juniper being one of the predominant ones because of its benefits. And then they were also adding symphonies of other flavors in there to try and make it palatable, because that base spirit at the time wasn't so tasty. They could only distill up to a certain proof back in the day with the technology they had. And so it was really important that they tried to add flavor to it. So they would add all of these botanicals to this malt-based spirit, and that was something that we know today as Genever. And Genever was the precursor to gin. So thank God for the geopolitical struggles of Europe back in the day. William of Orange of the Netherlands actually took over the monarchy in the UK. And we were at war with France, so we cut all of the imports from France. Now, what is France known for? Wine, brandy, cognac, and other delicious things like that. So along with that, it was like, okay, we've taken something away from the people, we have to give something back. So we have this beautiful thing called Genever, and that's how Genever quickly became gin. And I think it's such a beautiful little tale of history right there. And I see some people saying they love Genever too. Truly a delicious spirit, has a very unique flavor characteristic. It's got a little bit of that malt background, but still with that still with that botanical forward flavor, which I love. But the gins that we knew back in the day were of one particular category, and you guys know that category as London dry gin, okay? Now, what is the most famous gin cocktail you would argue in the world? I would like to hear what you guys think it is, but also what cocktails you guys love to drink at home. My God, Lucy Chadwick came in straight away with the perfect answer, the gin and tonic. I'm loving some of these other suggestions of aviations and all other delicious cocktails. So John and Sarah, you're not wrong with an aviation. It's a delicious cocktail. The Vesper Martini, I think we can cover a little bit of that. And of course, a French 75. The gin and tonic, something that brought gin into the main light of people's drinking it at home. Over in India, while the UK and England was trying to conquer the world, sorry about that, by the way, but hey, the US was us, I guess, right? So while we were over in India, we had the fantastic privilege of being affected by malaria. What a terrible disease, it was awful. And all of the soldiers were getting so sick, but the bark of the cinchona tree, actually when ground up into a paste and mixed with liquid, formed something that helped suppress the effects of malaria. And so that was the birth of sort of tonic, if you will. And after the soldiers came back from India, one of the guys brought back some of that to the UK, and sort of the mid-1800s, you see tonic being actually produced. And then in the late 1800s, you had Jakob Schweppes, who actually started producing Schweppes, one of the most well-known tonic brands that we know today. Now, as it came, tonic is very bitter, okay? So that's why, of course, the British mixed gin, sugar, and of course, any citrus flavor they could find from around the region in India with that, and the first gin and tonics were born. So to start with today, I know that probably gin and tonics are something that you either enjoy at home if you've signed up for a gin class, and if you haven't, I want to give you a route where you can make a simple twist on it that will be simply delicious. Okay, so we're going to be making one of my favorite styles of G&T today. It's known as a Spanish G&T, okay? So we're going to start with a glass full of ice. I like to use a very big balloon glass. This is one that says Dog Mother Wine Lover. That's from my girlfriend. It's her glass and it's our local dog store. We have a beautiful English cream retriever called Deja who's asleep on the living room floor. So we're going to start with our glass full of ice. And then we're going to start with our gin. And of course, today we're using Hendrick's gin. Thank you so much for tuning in here. And I can't wait to give you a bit of an insight into what is inside this magical bottle. We have a symphony of 11 botanicals with our solo flavors of rose and cucumber. One of the things that sets Hendrick's apart is that unique journey that the flavors will take you on. And Leslie Gracie, our master distiller, did such a great job in curating this liquid. And I'll tell you exactly how very shortly. So we're going to start with 2 parts of our Hendrick's gin. Now, it's very important to measure even when making cocktails at home. You see, why we measure is A, because we want to be responsible and know how much alcohol we're actually consuming. But B, it's for accuracy to make sure that the ratio of the cocktail is correct. And also consistency, because the thing about it is we want every cocktail that you make at home to be consistently delicious. And this is one way where you can make that happen. So we have our 2 parts of gin. Then I'm going to actually pour tonic on this. And the reason why I think this is so beautiful is I was in Spain and I was sitting there and they poured a hefty amount of gin, measured responsibly, over the ice. Then they poured in the tonic over their bar spoon and they let the liquid just run down that spoon and elegantly place over that gin and mix just ever so slightly with it. And it was one of the most magical moments of my life. They poured nearly the whole thing on there. And then they garnished it with something that I was not sure I'd seen before. They first garnished it with 3 English cucumbers, of course, a staple, because you always want to kind of complement the ingredients in gin with the garnish of a cocktail. The garnish is like a signature, okay? So if a gin, like Hendrick's gin, is beautifully infused with rose and cucumber, perhaps you could put cucumber on it. However, there are gins that very emphasize lemon or lime flavors, and they have those in the botanicals. So very important to always pay attention to first what's in the glass, and then you can make that garnish perfect for it. Now, I'm actually going to top this with a little crack of fresh black pepper, okay? Now, this is something that you might not have seen before, but when you go to Germany and places in Europe, you'll often find that they make a gin and tonic like this. The spicy notes of that black pepper, just a little bit on top, not too much. You don't want to overpower it. Really help you just enjoy a gin and tonic in a new light. So I hopefully will encourage all of you at home just to try a very simple twist to make something simply delicious at home. So with that, I'll say, I know it's tough that we're all kind of distanced away from each other right now and under quarantine, but the truth is, here's to distancing ourselves today so that we can hold each other closer tomorrow. I'm going to cheers all of you with this first glass. Give you a bit of a tink there on the camera. So delicious. How much tonic to the gin, Mr. P. McKeon is asking? You know, I tend to like to do sort of, if you were going to do 2 parts of gin to 3 parts of tonic. I think the way that these small bottles of tonic are actually measured is pretty perfect. I tend to like to do it in a big glass like this because when you fill it with ice, it means you can enjoy it for quite a long time. So I'll do my 2 parts of gin like we did before, and then probably just one of these to fill it off. And it's really lovely, perfect for the upcoming hot weather that you guys are going to be enjoying. So there we have our gin and tonic, and that brings you today. Somebody's asking if I have a favorite tonic brand. To be honest, I love the way that all different tonics interact and play with gins differently. So I highly advise, while you're at Mariana's next time, go in and take a little bit of a search around those mixers and see what they have and see the options. Because again, everything is going to give you a different flavor, and those unique experiences are why I love making cocktails so much, because they can be infinitely different, but infinitely beautiful. So we have our beautiful history of tonic. We've kind of gone up. When Hendrick's was launched, there was only that one category of gin that we mentioned before. And that was something that you may be familiar as London Dry Gin. Okay, now London Dry is characterized by its beautiful evergreen pine forward flavor that comes straight from juniper berries, being the most predominant flavor in that gin. Now, when Leslie Gracie came along, our master distiller, who is one of the most incredible people you will ever meet. She's about this tall and has a floor-length ponytail that sticks out of the bottom of her lab coat. So while she walks around the distillery, it's just the most magical thing. And if you ever have the pleasure of visiting our Curious Gin Palace in Girvan, Scotland, she's actually usually makes you tea when you walk in, and she's like, "Oh, would you like a cup of tea?" and passes it over, and it's truly a magical experience. So she thought, she didn't just think outside the box when she launched Hendrick's. She thought that there was no box, and she broke the glass ceiling of the gin category and created Hendrick's Gin. So while the London Dry was right here, she went out here with gin. By combining our beautiful symphony of 11 botanicals using 2 unique types of still, we ended up being able to come up with this flavor combination that was unlike any other. So in the mid-1900s, Charlie Gordon, who's the great-grandson of William Grant, and so you may be familiar with William Grant as the company that produces things like Glenfiddich, the Balvenie Scotch, Reyka Vodka, Milagro Tequila, and several other major brands out there. So Charlie Gordon was down in London in the mid-1900s, and he came across 2 stills. He came across the Carterhead still that was built in 1948, and he was like, "I need that," and he bought it. He then came across the Bennett style still that was actually built in 1860. So it's super old still, but it was beautiful. And he said, "Someday I'm going to use these 2 stills for something." And he brought them back to Scotland. And it wasn't until Leslie Gracie came on the scene that he realized that Hendrick's is what these 2 stills were born for. And when they started producing Hendrick's, they still produce Hendrick's to this day. And they're only 1,000 liters small. So that is tiny in comparison to a lot of other major gin distillers that have these gigantic 16,000 liter stills. It's crazy because Leslie is able to keep such a beautiful eye on the quality control of the spirit using this beautiful 1,000 liter stills that yields just over 500 liters of distillate per still. So that's crazy to think that all the Hendrick's comes from these 2 types of still, and it's just beautiful. We did introduce a 3rd still, the Carrot still, in a Valentine's Day card in 2014. And that is an exact replica of the Bennett style still that was built in 1860. So with Leslie coming up with this beautiful symphony of 11 botanicals, she added those 11 botanicals to that Carterhead still that is a vapor infusion. So all of the botanicals sit in a flavor basket that's up top of the still. When that neutral grain spirit in the bottom gets heated up, it passes over those botanicals. It's super high temperature and super high pressure, and it extracts the essential oils, which is just beautiful. And what we get from the Carterhead still is a uniquely light and floral distillate. Now, on the other side, we have the Bennett still. And the Bennett still, we actually macerate or soak all of the botanicals in the still overnight. So the last thing they do of the day is they put all the botanicals into the still with the neutral grain spirit and let it soak until the morning. one of the first things they do when they walk in is they go in and they slowly start to heat up that steam jacket that's on that still. If you heat it up too quickly, the juniper berries are going to pop and they're going to be very bitter and kind of create a weird flavor. So you have to slowly heat it up so that doesn't happen. And as it slowly heats up, once it's condensed, what you get is this beautiful, deep, rich, and spicy note from the Bennett style still. We then marry those two together, but it isn't until we consummate that relationship with the rose and cucumber essence that we vacuum distill separately that Hendrick's and the magic inside every bottle is truly, truly born. So with that being said, I know that was a lot of information. So if anybody has any questions, please throw them out there. And I'm sure either Sarah or Amanda or myself will be able to see them. Is that the same thing as a gin hat? I have many hats upstairs in my closet. And the truth is they all look good on me. So no, earlier, but steeping. So yes, you do have the flavor basket up here. It may be called a gin hat. I haven't really heard of that too much before, but it sounds like a good term that maybe we should adopt a little bit over at Hendrick's. And then yes, you're correct. The Bennett style is the steep versus the vapor infusion. Okay, so when we moved over to this beautiful new gin palace that was about 100 feet away from our old one in Girvan, Scotland, Leslie Gracie launched Orbium Gin. Now, we have our three expressions here. We have Hendrick's Orbium, we have Hendrick's, and we have Hendrick's Midsummer Solstice. I wanted to highlight Hendrick's today because it is that beautiful symphony of 11 botanicals with our soloists of rose and cucumber. And I wanted to make several cocktails that highlight that beautiful balance in here. And one is a martini. So a martini, everybody always asks me, what's your favorite martini? And it's actually a book I've been writing and a project I've been working on for quite a long time. And you may have seen me running around Chicago because I actually have a holster on my belt that I wear all the time that actually has a Curiosity cup right in there. So this is a Curiosity cup and actually has its own Instagram page too. But it's pretty fun. And I always ask for a martini as you wish. Because Princess Bride is one of my favorite movies of all time. And I love that sentiment of really looking at a bartender and finding out how they enjoy to drink something. And over the years, I've found a beautiful amalgamation of recipes. I think I have about 215 in my phone in a notes section of different martinis that I've been made around. But I want to show you just the recipe that I would make just as a very standard recipe for a martini that you can't go wrong with. So we're going to do 5 parts of our beautiful Hendrick's gin. And then we're going to do just a little 1 part of our vermouth. So a couple of tips and tricks on this is 1, always keep your vermouth in the fridge. I have a whole vermouth shelf up here on my fridge that has vermouths and sherry in it. So always keep your vermouth in the fridge because it's just very important to do that. Otherwise it can get oxidized a little quicker and not be quite as nice. So we're going to do 5 to 1 in there. And then I'm going to stir that down with our ice. Again, you want to stir it down with a lot of ice. I'm going to save a little bit because I have a couple more cocktails to go today. But we're going to give it a nice stir down until that's beautifully cold. Now, I know that you guys will be getting these recipes at some point, either throughout this or after the presentation. And so you're going to stir it just until you'd say that dilution is right. You can try it several times through if you like, or just wait until you feel that it's right. Now, once you're ready to
can you explain to us, I get confused sometimes with parts. Like sometimes I like to follow a recipe where it has the exact amount. So how do you measure parts?
Now, you made a great point, Amanda. The wonderful thing about parts is that you can make that anything you want to. So whether it's a cup for cocktails or whether it's a punch, like a bottle for a punch, 1 part can be anything. I could use this as a measuring tool. I could use this as a measuring tool. I could use anything you want. So often you equate parts to like something like ounces. So you could always say that 1 part equals 1 ounce, or you could say 1 part equals 2 ounces. So for our first cocktail, we did the gin and tonic, which was 2 parts, and then topped with about 3 parts of tonic. So very handy to just use parts because you can transition it to anything that you have around. And when you've made cocktails for like 100,000 people, like I have at some big events, you start to realize that a part could be a case. You know, it's quite fun. So one tip that I have for making martinis at home is I have my mason jar of martinis in my freezer at all times. And what I tend to do is I'll actually make a couple of different, I'll make a couple martinis at once. And then what I'll do is I'll pour it into my mason jar of martinis without ice. Make sure you strain off that ice because you don't want that ice to dilute any more than you think is perfect. Okay? And then straight from here, I can pour myself a martini anytime I like. And you know, if you have seen me around Chicago at any point, you'll realize that the teeny martini is something that I absolutely adore. I took a bunch of bartenders around Chicago it was maybe 6-7 months ago, and we went on a teeny martini pub crawl. And we went around Chicago and we drank teeny martinis in all of our favorite bars. So these are tiny martini glasses. You can always use something like this over here that's a beautiful standard one, but I love these teeny guys. It keeps it, again, in moderation, and you can enjoy quite a few over the course of the night and just have a really great time. And it's really good for sharing with others if you do happen to live with somebody, or you can always just virtually toast somebody while we're in today. So I'm going to pour my little martini right in there. And then, you know, the garnish for a martini, if you think an olive is the garnish for you, I say go for it. I say if it makes you happy, do it. But for me personally, I'm going to stick with our sort of adage of complementing the styles of gin. So I'm going to add a freshly cut English cucumber to my teeny martini glass, and I'm going to raise it. One thing I will say is that it's always important to keep your pinky out when enjoying Hendricks. My girlfriend and I actually have a secret pinky handshake while we toast our glasses. So maybe for the next one, she'll come and demonstrate with me if she's feeling brave enough. But
I love the idea of a teeny martini because sometimes one martini is too much if you drink a whole martini, and that's a great way. And then you put it in you said the fridge or the freezer, Mattias?
I do it in the freezer. When it's mixed with the alcohol in there, the Hendricks, because that's the majority part of it, it's not actually going to freeze the water off too easily. So, you know, you have to get down to pretty cold temperatures below zero for it to really freeze off.
Okay, we have some other questions. So people want to know where the glass is from. Lucy.
These ones are from a company called Urban Bar that I actually bought a while back. You can find them around if you look for martini glasses, and the volume of this would be either like 1.5 ounces or just going to be 45 milliliters if you're converting to European measurements. So you have 1.5 ounces in a teeny martini glass, or 45 milliliters if you're on the European milliliter system. So right. I'm glad you like it, Amanda. Hopefully I get to share one of these with you at some point.
I know, seriously. So in the freezer, how long will it last for?
You know, there's no citrus or anything in there. So I'd say it's pretty good if you've got an airtight container and it's full. The vermouth may change slightly over time if you've got a pretty empty container in there. But I'd say if you're leaving it in there for more than a week, you probably shouldn't be making martinis in a mason jar. But I tend to. And
for the vermouth part, how what's it like, sweet versus dry?
Yeah, so when making a martini, you have several different options. You've heard James Bond always ask for the shaken martini, whatever it is, the shaken not stirred. He was so wrong. Poor Ian Fleming. Like I love the books. I love him as a character. I think it's amazing. He's somebody that, if they were casting, I would probably try and apply or audition for the next role of James Bond, because I could actually make a real martini. And, you know, when you shake a martini, it's not to say that it's wrong, but what it does is it just, because you're getting it so cold, you lose some of the flavor from the gin, in my opinion. And what I love to do is by stirring it, you can really control that dilution. So when it comes to the idea of dry versus wet versus extra dry, whatever that is, if you're asking for a wet martini, that means that you want to be able to kind of really taste that vermouth in there, okay? Now, if you're asking for like a dry martini, maybe you want just a hint of vermouth in there, okay? I'm always of the opinion that you should never waste anything. And if you get somebody who rinses the glass out and throws out the vermouth, I say that's a waste. At least drink it or pour it on a houseplant or something that gives some life to it after it goes down the drain. It's just wrong. So I always say you could do just a little skosh in there. You could even just do a little bar spoon of vermouth if you really don't like the taste of vermouth, or you just want a hint in there, just a little bit. And if you want something that's an extra dry or no vermouth martini, then don't put any in. Just stir that gin directly over ice and let it go. One twist I love to do actually is play around with that mix. Sometimes the vermouth, if you're using a Bianco vermouth, it's a little sweeter. It's going to be sort of like an off clear color, but it's going to have like beautiful orange notes, and you know, there's different brands out there, but it's beautiful. Then you have the dry vermouth, which is just going to have those gorgeous botanical notes, and wormwood is one of often the most prominent botanicals that's in vermouth. And that's why when Leslie Gracie launched Hendrick's Orbium, she actually infused 3 additional botanicals in here of wormwood, lotus blossom, and quinine. So it pairs beautifully with a martini, this one, because it's like a puzzle piece. They fit together. And then sweet vermouth is a red color. And with that, you're often going to be seeing drinks like Manhattans, Martinez, if you would like a gin cocktail with it. I'll send that recipe to Amanda so she can include it afterwards. But a Martinez is one of my favorite cocktails. And if anybody says, I don't drink gin, but I love Manhattans, you make them a Hendrick's Martinez, and I promise you, they're not going to go back, because all roads lead to gin, okay? I see some more questions coming in. What about using scotch instead of vermouth? A burnt martini? I love it. I think that's a great idea. Using something like monkey shoulder scotch, to me, monkey shoulder is a beautiful blend of single malts, and it has the most beautiful round flavor with that. Sometimes you can add something that's got a little more kick to it, like a beautiful single malt, like a Glenfiddich or a Balvenie. Stunning idea. I think play away, have some fun. I would tend to maybe lean towards the Vesper side of recipes if you're going to use scotch, and maybe do your 3 parts of gin, 1 part vermouth, and then a little half part of scotch, or something like that. I think that's a beautiful idea. So thank you so much, Glenn, for suggesting that. That's lovely. Drank those. Perfect. I love that everybody's engaging, and thank you so much. It's wonderful to be able to be here and be part of your day. Okay, now we've moved past our beautiful, we've given you an in-depth look at the stills and the liquid that's kind of inside every bottle of Hendrick's gin. Would you guys like to make a cocktail along with me right now? I feel like I'm seeing some nodding heads on there. Amanda's cheering. I love that. So today we're going to be making something called the Cosmo Ricky, and it was inspired by one of my favorite drinks, the Cosmopolitan. It was actually the first cocktail that I ever drank, was the Cosmo. And this is a Cosmopolitan gin, and it's something that I encourage all of you to try. If you follow me on Instagram, you'll know I'm a lover of puns, so hence the Cosmopolitan gin. But I was drinking these with a dear friend of mine, and with Leslie Gracie's launch of Hendrick's Midsummer Solstice, I always was drinking these with Hendrick's anyway, and I just love the combination of the variants in this drink. I think it sings. So the Cosmo Ricky that we're going to go ahead and make along with everybody right now is inspired by this delicious drink here that I'm going to pass off to my girlfriend so she can enjoy it while she's listening to me speak in the kitchen. The Cosmo Ricky, here we go. So we're going to start with our Collins glass or highball glass or something of this nature. Now, the reason it's called the Gin Ricky, and the Gin Ricky was something that was inspired by the late 1800s in Washington, D.C. Enjoy. In late 1800s in Washington, D.C., Colonel Joe Ricky was at a bar, and after a while, the bartender made him this drink, and it stuck, and that's where the name comes from with the Gin Ricky. And traditionally, the Gin Ricky is 2 parts of gin, like 0.75 parts of fresh citrus juice, and then topped with soda water, okay? Now, again, 2 parts gin, 3/4 parts citrus juice, topped with soda over ice. Delicious cocktail. Today, I feel that people's palates have changed a little bit, and I know that mine certainly has a little, you know, since I was even started bartending. And I like a bit more of a balance. So I took that Cosmopolitan, and I made the beautiful Cosmo Ricky that we're all going to make right now. So if anybody has forgotten ice or anything, we're going to go ahead and start by leaving ice out of the glass, just in case anybody's forgotten out and needs to run to the kitchen to get it or something like that. So we're going to start with we're going to do 2 parts of our Hendrick's gin. So again, a part can be whatever you want it to be, but we're going to do 2 parts of Hendrick's gin right into our glass. And then we're going to do a little bit of our fresh citrus juice. Now, if you don't have fresh citrus juice and you have something else, please go ahead and use it. But I always say fresh is best when it comes to cocktails. I make fresh lemonade at my house all the time, fresh orange juice in the morning. This is actually one of my fruit bowls over here behind the flowers. So again, we're going to do 0.75 parts of our fresh lime juice. It looks like I'm lucky enough that this lime is exactly measured out for me. And we're going to add that 3/4 parts right into our glass. Then we're going to go ahead and make a bit of simple syrup. Now, simple syrup is exactly like it sounds. It's simple to make, but simple to enjoy, okay? It is equal parts hot water and sugar, okay? You can use white sugar, you can use like brown sugar, any kind of sugar works. It all depends on the flavor that you want at the end. So after we've made this cocktail, I'll talk a little bit more about simple syrup, and I'll give you a handy little tip that if you do it at home, you're going to literally be the hit of every party that you may have in the future because it's going to change up your cocktail game at home. So we're going to do just a half part of our simple syrup. And if for some reason you don't have simple syrup at home, you could always just add some sugar to it, but it's not going to be quite the same because you need that sugar to really get diluted. So make sure it's got dissolved in a little bit of hot water. Next, we're going to add just a little half part of cranberry juice. Now, I know there's a bunch of different types of cranberry juice out there, but Mariano's is a place where it's perfect to get because they stock great stuff. So just look at the ingredients and make sure it says the actual cranberry juice in it, and you've got it going, which is phenomenal. Now that we have the base to our cocktail right here, so again, we have our 2 parts of gin, 3/4 parts of fresh lime juice, half a part of simple, and half a part of cranberry juice. We're going to top our glass full of ice. And then we're going to top it with just a little bit of soda water. I'm not sure what you guys are going to be using wherever you are at home, but any soda water will do. I have actually done a soda water tasting before. It was really fun, very hydrating. So we're going to top it with just a little bit of soda, just like that. We're going to give it a little mix around. So use a spoon if you have it, or if you're making a cucumber spear, you could give it a stir with that just to mix up those flavors. You just want to push that ice down a little bit and get those flavors mixed. For garnish for this cocktail, you may be familiar that a Cosmopolitan traditionally has an orange liqueur in it. Now, for this cocktail, I actually love to do just a little bit of an orange garnish. Now, I can use my vegetable peeler here to peel off a lovely orange peel, and I can just kind of spray this right over the top to release those beautiful essential oils. Now, I don't know if you can see this, but I'm going to try. Watch very closely, and if you see off the top is like a, you can almost see like a, there you go. Did you see that? It's like a little bit of essential oils coming out of the orange skin. So you don't want to put the white pith onto the glass. That's really bitter and nasty. So you want to make sure that you use the actual outside of the orange. You can give it a little rub or a spray over, and then just put that in the cocktail. And if you so wish, like I am going to, I'm going to put a bit of an English cucumber slice right onto the side of my glass. And then I'm going to raise a glass to all of you. And I'm going to show you our little pinky toast that we have here at our house. We have cheers, and then a little, and you have to make sure that you always do the kissy noise because it makes it so much cuter. So we've always got like cheers, and there we go. And with that, we have the Cosmo Ricky, a delicious twist on a classic cocktail, bringing it to our palates today. What do you guys think? I'd love to see what you guys think at home. If you guys have made this, if you think it's delicious. I know that this has literally been my crushing drink of the summer, and I have loved every second of it. And you can find all of these ingredients at Mariano's, whether you're doing the online ordering or whatever it is. It's really great. So I'm glad that people find it fascinating. Thank you so much, Paige, for saying it's delicious. It truly, truly is.
It's not just delicious, it's beautiful. The color is like the total perfect Cosmo color. And the orange does make it taste more like a Cosmo, which is amazing. And it's very refreshing.
I'm glad you think so, Maddie. Yeah, and that's a beautiful glass, by the way. I love seeing what people have at their house.
This is my mom's from 1968. I have a whole set.
It's beautiful. I love that. That's just 20 years after the Carter head still was built at Hendrick's. That's beautiful. Well, I hope everybody enjoyed that cocktail. there is one thing I really want to give you guys like some insight on how to make great things at home. And one of my favorite things to do is make interesting simple syrups. Now, you may be a little bit like, well, how do you make interesting simple syrups? Is it complicated? I thought the same when I kind of maybe first started, and I was like, how do they get these crazy flavors into these cocktails? The truth is actually much easier than you might imagine. I won my first ever cocktail competition by walking down the tea aisle at a supermarket over in England. And so it was just fascinating to me that these teas were all these beautiful array of flavors. So next time you're at Mariano's, I advise you, walk down the tea aisle and have a think about what you think might work well in your cocktails. So if you're making something like a Cosmo Ricky and you find a beautiful herbal hibiscus tea or something, why not make a hibiscus simple syrup simply by adding equal parts sugar to hot tea? Because all simple syrup is equal parts sugar and hot water. And so by adding tea to that hot water, you get these amazing flavors. I love to make a good Hendrick's gin mule. So just, again, using sugar, ginger beer, a little bit of lime juice. But instead of using simple syrup, I love to make like a peach tea simple syrup. Or I'll make a batch of like peach iced tea from like scratch at home and then mix that to make a simple syrup. And it creates the most amazing flavor combinations ever. So I hope that you guys take that advice on and enjoy searching the Mariano's next time you're there for some delicious tea to add to your simple syrup to really increase your cocktail range at home. How's everybody doing?
We do have a lot of teas at Mariano's. We have a lot in our tea aisle, but we also have international aisles in all the stores. And when we had Jillian from Tullamore do like her favorite Irish tea, like we actually sold it in the international aisle. So
is that Barry's?
Yeah, you have like a good way of like finding it. And it's when she did her class too, that's a really interesting point. You know, a lot of people do coffee cocktails, but to use tea, we all have a lot of tea in our pantry. I'm sure I have so many different kinds, but that's a great tip.
You know, it's funny, the Mariano's actually saved my life one time. When I first moved to Chicago, it was winter and I was freezing cold. I just moved into my apartment. I had nothing in it except like a TV and a yoga mat. And I was out of tea and I was like, oh my God. So I rode my penny farthing, which is like one of those giant old school bicycles that you have with the big front wheel and the small back wheel. I rode it through the icy winds of Chicago down to the Mariano's. I think it was the one on Ashland. Over there, and I wrote it down, and I went in there and I bought myself like a set of tea, and I was like, oh my God, and I went back home and it saved me. So thank you, Mariano's, for that. I appreciate it.
We're so thankful. While you weren't looking, I made a teeny martini. A teeny martini, well, I'll raise a glass here and say cheers. And I used the scotch. I just wanted to try what it would taste like, and I think it's really interesting because I know Glenn I think asked about using scotch instead of vermouth, and I actually saw like some video, I want to say with Stanley Tucci, and he was doing it with scotch, and it has such a cool flavor to it. I really like it.
Stanley Tucci, the king of modern cocktails, apparently, after shaking his wonderful Negroni the other day online. Love that. He's a great guy.
Yeah, but it taste really cool. I like it.
Yeah. So that is sort of with making all the cocktails at home. There is one more secret cocktail I would like to introduce you to right now. And then I'll be conscious of people's time and I'll let you guys get back to your wonderful day. But one of my favorite things to drink is actually a White Russian. It's one of my all-time favorites, always has been, and I don't think it's ever going to stop. Always from The Big Lebowski, when you're talking about the dude, really stuck with me. And I actually made a Hendrick's version of it that's very easy, and it's just something that you could probably make at home. So we're gonna add our ice to our glass, and then we're gonna do 2 parts of our Hendrick's gin, and we're gonna actually put a little bit of coffee liqueur in here as well, which is something that I love working with. I know, Amanda, you just mentioned that you were, talking about coffee cocktails, and it's something that's truly beautiful. I'm using Mr. Black here. It's a cold brew coffee method of making coffee liqueur, and it's delicious. So I'm going to add like a 1 part of that, a little extra so it's a bit under. So I'm going to do 1 part of coffee liqueur, and then I'm going to do just another 1 part of milk. I'm using an oat milk here because I don't really do the whole lactose thing, but I'm doing a bit of oat milk, and you can find a whole selection of beautiful milks over at Mariano's, of course. And then one of my favorite things is I'm going to do a little bit of cherry syrup. And again, you can use pretty much any cherry syrup. I really advise you using something that has this dark red color though, as opposed to, you know, something that might be a little bit of that lighter red variety. And if you have them lying around, I love chocolate. It's one of my all-time favorite things, as it is Leslie Gracie, our master distillers. So I'm going to put a couple dashes of our chocolate bitters in there, and you can find those around as well. And then just as a garnish, I'm going to grate some nutmeg on top. So freshly grated nutmeg is one of the most magical things of all time. Did you know at one point nutmeg was actually worth more than gold? Because it had to come from so far around the world that when it came into port, that it was like the most valued thing. And so to be drinking a spirit that had a botanical from all across the world was seen as something beautiful. So I'm just going to give this a bit of a cheers and a sip and see what I think.
That looks awesome. I actually do have all the things to make that. I'm going to make it after this, but we have a few questions. The McKeans wanted to know, I think he did say it should be like 100% cranberry juice, right? Not you want like the full juice experience, right?
Sometimes actually I enjoy making sort of something with like the ones that are a bit of a mix of like the juice, because if you use pure cranberry juice, it can be very, very tart. So you just have to make sure that you're at that. I love using that stuff. I think it's great, but just be careful. You might want to add some water to that just to give it a bit of a dilution, because that tartness from 100% pure cranberry juice can be pretty tough. But this is one thing. Yeah.
It's just like cranberry.
Yeah. Hey, simply delicious. I love that.
Can you use midsummer solstice to make the Ricky Cosmo?
Absolutely. One thing I love about this is actually the drinks I kind of made today, you can make with any of the variants of Hendrick's. I love Hendrick's Midsummer Solstice. It is truly one of my favorites. Flowers are something to me that mean a huge amount, as Amanda knows. And Leslie Gracie as well is an avid florist. And so Midsummer Solstice was actually launched based off our old global ambassador's wedding. When he got married, Leslie made 6 bottles of gin for him based off his wife's bouquet at the wedding. And we just called it the wedding gin for years. But when we launched our new gin palace, which is basically if you took Alice in Wonderland and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and then you all went down a different rabbit hole, it was actually modeled off that gin that was originally there. So it's a toast to the beautiful bouquet of flowers that we can experience during the midsummer time when all the flowers are blooming in the garden. And yeah, I love mixing with it across all of the drinks we've made today. Truly makes an amazing cocktail. And
I haven't tried it yet, and it looks the bottle's beautiful, and it sounds so interesting.
It's stunning, yeah. And I tell you, like if you want to take your Cosmos to the next level, you have to try it with Hendrick's, okay? I know that usually it typically calls for vodka, and if you have some lying around at home, try the recipe that I gave you with that until it runs out. And when you next go to Mariano's, buy some Hendrick's, and and then maybe some Midsummer Solstice eventually there, which is great. I'm super excited for you all to try it at some point. It literally will take you a cool.
So can I can't tell if sometimes these questions are serious or not. Someone's using Capri Sun, but you know what? We're in sheltering in place and quarantine. So if you have Capri Sun, I guess it's okay to use it, right, Mattias?
Absolutely. I think that idea of to-go cocktails is something that's truly beautiful right now. So I say, why not have a couple sips, drink it, and then put the cocktail right back in there? Have fun.
I think that does sound fun. Can you go through the differences again? You talked about the Midsummer Solstice and the regular Hendrick's, and then there's another one there.
Totally, yeah. So right here, we have our Hendrick's gin, again with our symphony of 11 botanicals with our soloists of rose and cucumber. This is the Hendrick's that we've known and loved for many years, since 2000 when we launched here in the US. The first innovation that Leslie Gracie came up with was a thank you to the trade, to the bartenders for making Hendrick's what it was over the years. This is Hendrick's Orbium. Hendrick's Orbium is infused with 3 different things, in addition to the beautiful symphony of 11 botanicals that is in Hendrick's and the rose and cucumber as well. we have quinine, lotus blossom, and wormwood. So hence why I think this pairs so beautifully with martinis, because the wormwood in the vermouth and the wormwood in here interact like a beautiful puzzle. Next, we have the Midsummer Solstice. That was her next innovation that was widely launched to everybody and available everywhere. And this, of course, is our beautiful addition of that floral bouquet. Leslie wants you guys to find your own floral bouquet in there. So that's where we leave it as the details of what's in it. But it's back to that whole thing. If I say, don't think of a gray elephant, you think of a gray elephant. And so with this, we're giving you the ability to really find your own bouquet in cocktails at home. So I highly advise, get this, mix it up into those cocktails, try it in a Cosmopolitan, and have some fun.
And Maddie, speaking about bouquet, can you tell everyone about your beautiful floral arrangement, please? Because we had a practice call yesterday, and of course, we were all over that whole situation.
Yeah, absolutely. So the flowers is something I love. When I'd never really been in a relationship actually before I met the love of my life, my girlfriend currently. And when I started dating her, I was buying these beautiful floral arrangements from the local market down here in Texas. But I realized there was something missing, and it was sort of the love that I have for her was missing. So I started making my own arrangements for her. So now I put together all my own floral arrangements for her, because I think it has a little more something to it. You know, if you just buy other stuff, it's I don't know, it lacks a little bit of that personal care and touch. So now I come home with like armfuls of flowers sometimes, and I'm like, make way, clear the kitchen counter. I've got to like arrange these beautiful tulips. And family's from the Netherlands, so the tulip is her favorite flower.
Oh, I love it. Okay, we have a question from someone who joined late. They wanted to ask why you add simple syrup when you don't usually for a Cosmopolitan.
Yeah, so actually, to be honest, I've seen a lot of recipes for a Cosmopolitan that call for simple syrup in it. I personally, I've said it before and I'll say it again, you know, however you enjoy it, it's up to you. Don't ever let anybody tell you that what you're doing is wrong or right. It's a matter of personal preference. My cousin loves a Cosmopolitan, and I personally wouldn't necessarily make it how he makes it, but he actually has cards printed out in his wallet that have the recipe on, so that when he gives it to a server at a restaurant, they won't mess it up, because he's tried it even the way that I love it. And he's like, I still prefer my way. And I'm like, then power to you. So I think it adds a little bit of balance to a Cosmopolitan, and it makes it just that much more crushable, especially during those hot months. I love just being able to really sip on something nice. And if you add a little bit of simple syrup, it just increases the beautiful mouthfeel, as well as that flavor will last if you wanted to put it on ice as well. So you can put it in if you'd like. I recommend it. But again, if you're using a gin that happens to be a bit sweeter and you think it's too sweet, then mix it out the next time. Totally up to you guys. And then I saw another question that said, for citrus, could you use lemon instead of lime interchangeably? The citrus has the same effect, but it's just a slightly different flavor across cocktails. And so with the lime in a Cosmo, I think lemon is also a beautiful addition, and you totally could use lemon instead. However, I just think that lime and cranberries just go really, really well together. And that lemon, just for me, it's a little off. So I advise you, find what works for you. But you know, I always say, if you don't have limes at home and you only have lemons, then make a quick daisy. It's an original cocktail, and you can use the golden ratio of cocktails, which would just be 2 parts of spirit, do 1 of sour, 1 of sweet, and then shake it over ice and pour it off, and you have something golden and ready to go. Maybe I'll get to come back and do another one with Amanda and the gang from Mariana's about the golden ratio of cocktails, because I could talk for hours about that.
I think that would be awesome. And then while you're doing that, you're also going to be doing floral arranging. So it'll be a two. We
have Mother's Day planned out.
We do have Mother's Day already planned out, but that's not to say there's lots of other stuff we have coming up. So I'm sure we can figure something else out. We definitely want to have you back.
Perfect. My husband said if he had a girlfriend, he would arrange flowers for her too. That's great. Do we have Hendrick's Luna in the US? You know, that's a great question. Hendrick's Luna was something that was launched in the UK this year. It is a beautiful addition to our expressions here in the US. And with all of the craziness that happened here in the US, plans have changed a little bit. So I would just say stay tuned for when we're going to be launching that. And I'm really excited when that time comes to be able to introduce you to a brand new expression that we will enjoy by moonlight.
I'm looking around at everybody. Does anyone want to show us a cocktail that they made? Was anyone mixing along? I mean, I was happy that I got to do it.
I'm going to change over to the...
Oh, wait, here's Josh and Sarah. Here we go. Hold on. Okay, and then we're going to get to everybody. Here's Josh and hi, cheers. Ooh, I have to do first. Hold on. So I'm not that good at this yet. You would be surprised. You think I'd be good at it by now. But
Cheers.
Okay. Yeah, cheers. So what, did you make the Ricky?
Yes, I did. I didn't have
glassware. It's beautiful.
Thank you. I didn't have any cranberry juice, so I just used grapefruit juice. Tastes good.
Yeah.
We're in quarantine. We use what we have, right?
Yep.
Basically, you know, there's a family tree of cocktails, if you will, when you trace everything back, and they all stem from a couple. So when you go down, you're like, oh yeah, that's like a Paloma. I love it. So great job, guys. That's awesome.
Here's Karen. Oh, look at that. That looks awesome.
That looks beautiful, guys.
Are you enjoying it?
They're vintage glasses, so absolutely, it's half gone.
Oh my God, yours are from 64, mine are from 68. So we're in the right decade, I guess, right?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Awesome. All right, and there was a few other people. I'm just going to get to them really quick before we wrap it up. Jennifer, here we go. I will get good. I will get faster at this one day, guys, so I apologize. But I think you're unmuted, so that's, oh, hi, how are you?
Hi.
Hello.
What are you guys drinking?
Drinking gin and lime bubbly.
You know, that's a great idea. But oh, I love your dog.
And then lime.
That's gorgeous, guys. That looks stunning. I love the addition of the strawberry in there as well, man. That looks beautiful.
Whatever we got.
Whatever you got. And bubbly's awesome. That's so cool. I love it. All right. Well, does anyone else have any other questions for Mattias? And we have him here. He was so awesome to see how many drinks that he showed us tonight. We're going to send them all out. It's really nice to have all those options. And I love the idea of a Cosmo because it's such a classic cocktail, but I actually like this better, Mattias. I think it has a smoother flavor and it's way more refreshing. I really like it.
It's something that come the summer months up in Chicago when that breeze gets going on the lake and you guys get to sit out. It's just going to be such a beautiful cocktail for you. And Amanda, I'm going to pass it back to you right after I finish off and just say thank you to everybody for coming. It's been such a great experience here. Give me a follow at The Bar Poet because next time I'll be up in Chicago, I'd love to meet up with anybody if anybody's up in that general vicinity. But I travel all over the world. So if ever I happen to be in your neighborhood and you see me on there, please shoot me a message. If you ever have any questions about gin or anything like that, would love to meet up with you guys, share a cocktail, share a toast, and say hello.
Great, I'm at it again, Mattias. I'm at it again. I'm finding people.
I love it.
There's Heith and Teresa, and they made all 3 drinks, right?
Yes. I thought we were making all 3, so it was going really fast, but they were all good, and this is all I have left.
Oh my gosh, that's a happy hour.
I love that.
Yes.
Where are you guys tuning in from?
We are from Orlando, Florida.
Beautiful. I
How
love
did
that.
you find out about our classes if you live in Orlando? Because we were basically based in Illinois.
Yeah, I had a friend that lived up in Chicago, and he kind of told me about you guys, and then I saw you on Eventbrite, so I thought I'd check you out.
Awesome. We're so happy to have you.
Awesome.
Oh, yeah, we did the Corican cooking class last week, too.
Oh, which one did you do?
The Corican
Oh, yes,
cooking
I remember
class.
you had your daughters with you, too, right?
Yep.
That was so fun. That was I actually made it that night, and then I made it again like 2 nights later. It's such a good recipe. It was easy.
Yep. Very cool.
Delicious.
Thank you.
See you again. Thanks for coming.
That's great. Well, I love that we're tuning in all the way from Ireland, from Orlando, and across the US. So, no matter what the weather is, wherever you guys are, I know that it's, true warmth comes from those that you hold close to you. And I know that we can't necessarily hold everybody we want as close as we want right now. So I'll finish with where I started and say that here's to distancing ourselves today so that we can hold each other closer tomorrow. Cheers,
That's
Amanda.
a great one, Mattias. Everyone, thank you so much. Stay safe. Tomorrow night, we have our live music live at Mariano's that we feature off of our Facebook Live. Saturday, if you have kids that are probably up to 8 or 10, we have Miss Jamie from the farm. And then next week we start all over again. It's Cinco de Mayo on Tuesday. So we have 2 of our tastemaker chefs, the chef of River Roast and Teatro. Oh my gosh, I can't pronounce it all of a sudden. Terza Piano. Did I say it right? Terza Piano. They're making a whole family spread for Taco Tuesday and Cinco de Mayo and their margarita recipe. And then Wednesday, we have Wine Wednesday with Belinda Chang, and we'll be going over floral with Tom Kehoe just in time for Mother's Day. And then Thursday, we have another mixology class. So we're really excited to keep doing these. And I love having so many repeat people in the room. So thank you, everyone. Cheers and stay safe. Thank you.
Cheers, guys.